What if one of the Bible's most famous stories isn't really about a tower at all, but about the arrogance of empire? The Tower of Babel is essentially ancient trash talk. The Israelites weren't inventing a myth, they were writing political satire about their future oppressors. This is what the tower actually looked like. Scholars identify as the ziggurat to Marduk in Babylon, a massive stepped pyramid temple reaching toward the heavens. These structures dominated the Mesopotamian landscape. The Babylonians built them to honor their gods and display imperial power. But here's the twist. Babylon would later destroy Jerusalem in 586 BCE. When Israelite writers told this story, they weren't describing some mythical structure. They were mocking the greatest symbol of their oppressor's pride. To understand this satire, we need context. Genesis 10 presents all humanity as one family descended from Noah's three sons, Japheth, Ham, and Shem, the origin of the term Semites. Everyone shares one language, one ancestor. This raises an obvious question ancient audiences would ask. If we're all one family, why do we speak different languages? Why do we live scattered across the earth? The Babel story is an etiological tale, a story that explains origins. It answers the language diversity question. Notice the dramatic structural shift. Genesis 1 through 11 covers roughly 2,500 years of universal history, creation, flood, the spread of nations. Then suddenly Genesis 12 through 50 covers just 4 generations of one family. The Bible story serves as the bridge. It explains why the narrative narrows so dramatically from all humanity to Abraham's descendants. Something happens at Babel that changes God's strategy entirely. Now for the satire. Babel in Hebrew is Bavel, the word for Babylon. The Babylonians understood their city's name to mean gate of the god, referring to Marduk, their chief deity, but the Hebrew writers exploit a devastating pun. Babel sounds like balal, the Hebrew word meaning to confuse. So Babel becomes Babel, the empire's greatest source of pride. Their magnificent ziggurat becomes the symbol of their humiliation. Babylon's gate of the god is rebranded as the place of confused speech, and this is deliberate mockery encoded in the very name. Why does God intervene? 3 interpretations emerge from the text. First, storming heaven. A tower with its top in the sky suggests human hubris reaching for divine status. Second, defying the command. God told humanity to fill the earth, spread out. Instead, they congregated and built upward. Third, a critique of empire itself. Monumental architecture and empire building lead to self-aggrandizement and forgetting God. The text supports all 3 readings. The builders want to make a name for themselves, the same Hebrew phrase used for mighty warriors and kings throughout Scripture. Babel completes a pattern. Adam and Eve, individual disobedience in the garden, expulsion follows. Cain, violence against his brother, exile results. The flood generation, widespread corruption requiring a complete reset. Now the Babel builders, collective defiance, scattering across the earth. Each episode shows humans misusing their moral freedom. Each time God responds with consequences. The pattern escalates from individual to family, to society, to all humanity, acting in concert against God's design. After 4 cycles of rebellion, God changes approach. Universal engagement hasn't worked. Time for a different strategy. One common misconception, God feels threatened by human achievement, and the text actually mocks this idea. God says, "Let us go down to see the tower." Divine irony. The Almighty has to descend just to notice their mighty work. God isn't insecure about a building. The issue is intent, defying the command to spread, self-aggrandizement, forgetting their creator. Another misconception, the scattering is pure punishment. But it actually fulfills God's original command to Fill the earth. Correction, not just punishment, redirecting humanity toward the original design. This pattern explains one of Scripture's most dramatic shifts. After repeated spurning, God changes strategy. Instead of universal engagement with all humanity, he chooses one person, Abraham, one family, one particular path. The logic: I cannot reach everybody through universal means. Let me find one party and build from there. Genesis 12 opens with God calling Abraham out of where? Mesopotamia, the very region of Babel. From the place of scattering and confusion, God begins gathering. From the land of empire and self-made names, God promises to make Abraham's name great. The biblical framework differs fundamentally from neighboring mythologies. In ancient Near Eastern myths, the central conflict involves cosmic battle between good and evil gods. Humans are bystanders in divine warfare. In the biblical narrative, the struggle is between God's will and human rebellion. The conflict is moral, not cosmic. This makes humans responsible agents, not pawns. The problem isn't rival deities. The problem is human choice, and that's precisely what makes redemption possible. The Tower of Babel operates on 3 levels simultaneously: an origin story explaining linguistic diversity, political satire mocking Babylonian pride, and a turning point explaining why God shifts from universal engagement to one family's particular journey.